started. Thank you. Hopefully there'll be a few more people joining us. And so just for Ryan's benefit, what we have been doing with this last cycle of Buddhism 101 has been a group discussion where we have topics and I introduce the topic and then we take turns talking about it, what it has meant to us and so on, what we think about it. And it's been very interesting. Everybody's really enjoyed that as part of the process. So we keep on a Dharma topic and try and understand it from practical points of view and reveal where we need to do work and maybe suss out where we've been very successful with it. So we invite everybody to speak. So and it's important to join in the conversation.
Is everybody, are people keeping their Zooms on mute and then unmuting to talk, or just leaving the mic on and kind of letting it be more free flowing?
And this it doesn't matter to me. You know, if there's a case where we're chanting prayers together or something, then it's advisable that everybody turn their microphones off. But otherwise, you can leave your mic on. As long as there's no feedback, it's no problem.
Yeah, well, if I get any a 4-year-old or 2-year-old or 8-year-old feedback, I'll mute myself.
Well, I was just going to say, if there's some rugrats running around, that could be a problem.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Thanks.
And we love rugrats.
Yeah, I know you do. They love you too. So there you go.
All right. Well, to get started, if you don't mind, we're all going to start with our Buddhism 101 book, and I'll just do the short opening prayers. And so on page 5, the short refuge prayer. Well, actually, I think what I'll do is I'll read once in English, starting on page 1 with the altruistic motivation. I think that would be better. We've had 2 weeks off. It would be good to establish a stream of consciousness. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Okay, thank you very much. So what we've been talking about these past weeks have been on the 3 mind trainings that lead to the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. So we talked about the training in superior morality, and we talked about in that was generosity, moral ethics or discipline. We talked about patience, and we talked about perseverance. So if you have this book, this is the Jewel Ornament of Liberation outline book. We're using this right now. So you might be able to follow along with that with our outline, or if you have the Jewel Ornament of Liberation right there, as Michael was just sitting down with. So the training in superior morality is the first of the mind trainings, the 3 mind trainings. And the second is the training in superior thought. And superior thought, that includes meditative concentration. So whether we are thinking about mundane things and thinking through all the possibilities, all the myriad possibilities that we have in making decisions about everyday situation, but also bringing in meditative concentration, where we're not only thinking about those mundane things, but we're thinking in terms of the Sambhogagaya. The Sambhogagaya is the subtle enjoyment body, and these are the realms of the 5 Buddha families. And so by bringing this into our awareness, into our consciousness, into thinking about this, and applying this to our everyday situations, gives us a context in which we begin to really discipline our lives with our spirituality. That we start making decisions based on spiritual practice, spiritual endeavor, and so on. So then tonight we're going to talk a little bit more about training in superior wisdom awareness. So the superior wisdom awareness is what arises out of the meditative concentration. So does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to bring up about the past weeks before we get deeper into the transcendent awareness? Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
So when speaking about the method of meditative concentration, and I think we've just talked about this before, one of the theoretical outcomes is clairvoyance, and I'm wondering if there's some sort of representation of clairvoyance that shows up as a more pedestrian characteristic, something that that regular practitioners or devout practitioners might show benefiting from. I mean, in my mind, going way back to when I studied, studied paranormal clairvoyance was, it was a human, it was a very human talent, but it was outside of the bounds of, 999,000 of 100,000 people. Are we to believe to some extent that with this, which is not a high-end practice, the perfection of meditative concentration, that there is some sort of simile, some sort of representation of clairvoyance that shows up in normal folks like us?
So you're looking for an example, and I'm certainly not an expert in this, but I kind of feel like, from time to time there has been, some, at the very least, a coincidences that were very interesting, that maybe, some might interpret as being clairvoyance. Just today, I was having a conversation with somebody, and we were talking about a particular set of situation, everyday situation. And it just happened that the chapter that we were referring to in the book went exactly with that particular situation. Now, whether that was clairvoyance or not, I don't know. But the point is that we were tuned into that many times, just like a conversation we're having right now. One of us might be thinking, or something pops into our mind that somebody is thinking of, and say, oh yeah, I just had that thought too. Is that clairvoyance? Or is that, serendipity? What, they have different names for it. Is it déjà vu? Meeting somebody or seeing a situation and recognizing it as being very familiar, like you've had that experience before or something. Very often, you can have it with family members. My daughter lives in California, and many times we're, all of a sudden I'm thinking of her and bang, the phone rings and it's her, that kind of thing. Or it may happen when I'm calling her or something like that. So there's been lots of things like that where people are tuned in, and similar thoughts are sparking between each of the two people, or maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's many people. What do you think of that, Michael?
Well, what do you think of that? Is that coincidence, or is it clairvoyance, or is it coincidence? I mean, is it a crossing of each one of these, poles of a duality? Does it just depend on timing? Are we all always clairvoyant? Is this one of the things that we're deluded, that we're covered up? I mean, that's what I think. I think we're born much more connected than we age as, and so I think our conditioning has obscured, like Pink Floyd said, it's obscured by clouds. And that's what they were talking about. The clouds come over and obscure the ability to see things that we don't get to see anymore, whether we're seeing some truth, some true nature, the way the world really is, or we have a better world view. I mean, I think all of the above is probably what I would consider to be the case. I remember being younger when I actually studied these sorts of things, and I was able to produce in myself without too much maturity, so experiences that to my recall were extrasensory. They were not, that I wasn't using my 7 senses in order to make connections. So, but now that I'm an old fart, there's a lot of coincidences, but I happen to feel like it's just my memory is just shot. So everything seems like everything, you can only experience.
I don't want to dominate
so
this.
many moments. Go ahead.
I don't want to dominate this, but I do want to say, remember that the point of that we have the ground, the path, and the fruition, the result. And when we start with our ground, and then we embark on this pathway to get to where we want to be, which in this case maybe is something we might call enlightenment or something. And once we reach there, we find that we were there already when we were at the ground, and we just didn't recognize it. You know, so I think there's a strong element of that. So I'd like to open this up to other people. Does somebody else have a comment that they'd like to talk about this? Experiences of clairvoyance or thoughts about it? Tom?
Like the Lama said, years, long time ago, the monks used to fly from mountain peak to mountain peak. I mean, we talk about clairvoyance. I mean, I think that's something that's always has been and always will be, but we just, like you said, it's covered by our obscurations. You know, we are all Buddhas. We all have the ability. It's just, we just haven't recognized it. And that's what
Have
we're.
you had that experience yourself?
I mean, I guess what some of those experiences with like deja vu, or, you know, like, wow, I've been here, I've known this, or, you know, some of the clairvoyances, what be able to see in the past, the present, the future, being able to, I mean, there's so many. I myself, no, I haven't. No, I'm a very beginner, so, you know, I wouldn't even fathom that, but it's amazing when you read, you know, the teachings of the Buddha, some of the cases that would come up, or, you know, like talking about Shariputra, or talking about Kashyapa, you know, that, you know, he can, these abilities that arise from when you become an arhat, you know, and I guess I can't even fathom those things, you know, but yes, I think, Michael, you know, like you said, I think this is the age of the degenerate age right now. So maybe there are still beings that have these abilities, but, you know, it's just doesn't seem very prominent like it used to be.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have a comment?
I do. I'm not exactly sure what it means, but I'll say what I think. I think that as time has passed in human history, our minds have been invaded by the awareness, more and more phenomena. Modern communications does that to us, and there are more things that we have to process. I remember reading, and I may have mentioned this before, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but maybe as long as 40 years ago, I was reading a futurist named Alvin Toffler, who wrote a book that I read called Future Shock. And if I remember correctly, Toffler defined future shock as the point where the ability of our mind to process information is exceeded by the amount of information that invades our mind that we're exposed to. And it's not that you can just simply say, well, I'm not going to pay attention to that. If it's happening and you're aware of it somehow, even if you think that you're not paying attention to it, it affects your mind and your ability to process and perceive other things. And the point that I'm trying to get at here is that I think that affects our intuitive nature. I think that it may be that it affects our ability to perceive things in the way that we're talking about here. I'm not sure of that, but I know that we are faced with an increasing storm of things, and we've got to find a way to deal with that. Now, you can deal with some of it by turning the television off and reading and spending time alone in the park and meditating, but no matter what you do, the world is still there as it is. And I think that that back when I think there was a time when monks and other mystics and other people really had this intuitive sense.
But
and
you don't
ability.
think people have it now?
I think that some do, but fewer do. And those that do, I think, are people that manage somehow to separate themselves from the storm of life in a way that most of us don't in our daily lives.
Okay. Does anybody else have a comment you'd like to make?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
What I would share in this context is when you slow down your heart rate, you do this for a prolonged period of time, you create an awareness, you ground yourself. Then from there, almost everything becomes slow. The last experience that I have was maybe a couple months ago. And also back in September when I did the Vipassana, where I went away for 10 days with no talking. It was just meditation. And you had access to nothing. No reading. All you did was meditate, eat, and that's sleep. And I was able to hear things. I was able to see things. This happened before, right? And the fact that it happened 2, 3, 4, 5 times to me, it's no longer an experiment. The first 2 times I say a coincidence, but after—
So would you call that clairvoyance?
Because there are things that I'm able to see. There are things that would happen to somebody and I would see it. I'm very technical, I'm very logical. It does not make sense. At the same time, I have some understanding as to how light function. So to be able to see where I'm here, I'm able to see something that's like miles away. I don't know how, I think it's Michael, if Michael would define that as clairvoyance, something that's going to happen. It looks like it's going to happen in the future, but you see it beforehand. And I think that's how I would define it. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else like to add something? I'd like to bring it back to Michael and see what he thinks. Ryan, please comment.
Yeah. Sometimes when my kids were really little, I'd have these experiences where it was like they could feel or understand what I was thinking in a way that didn't involve language. And so I think, echoing what some other people were saying about like the obscurations, kind of covering that up. And as we build this idea of the world around us and we kind of create all of these things that kind of cloud that ground awareness, we move away from it. But I just remember knowing that my kids will understand things or feel things, or, you know, like I could be really happy and I could see them feeling that same thing, or I could be really sad and I could see them feeling that same thing without any kind of communication, not even like them watching my face or something like that. Like, you know, and even before they kind of recognize those kinds of expressions, but yeah, just from like another room even. So I like that, what people are saying about that stuff. And maybe what Ed was saying had to do with him kind of like clearing away some of that. And so I would wonder if, you know, after you kind of return to your like worldly activities, and if those things, or if your ability to perceive those things like went away, or maybe if you were less aware of it, you know, as you get back into the hustle and bustle of work or life in whatever other way. And I was thinking about that, the stages of meditation card, where at some point when the monk has kind of cut through all of his obscurations, he has these like a different awareness or something. So I wonder if that relates to what Michael was talking about. But it doesn't seem like it does with the people who claim that they're just clairvoyant, like, period. And I wonder about that. I wonder how much of that is factual, or if, I don't really know, I guess. I have no idea.
So Michael, let me bring it back to Michael then. Do you think clairvoyance is something where you can be, you have the gift of prophecy? That you can look into someone's heart and see, you know, something that maybe they themselves didn't recognize? What do you think of that?
I think it's all of the above. Edgar Cayce was the classic example of a Western clairvoyant. A good friend of mine at Mason was his education director down at the Cayce Institute, and I think they're in
Virginia Beach?
Virginia Beach, yeah. You know, back in the day, clairvoyance was looked upon as if the essence of our being was more vaporous than others, and that it allowed us to cross barriers like a cloud. So we weren't, you know, if you were clairvoyant, you could move out of your body, you know, you could astral project, you could visit other people's experience, you could travel vast distances, you might even time travel, which of course includes, you know, the potential for future telling, and at the same time past life experiences were a big part of Cayce's world. Yeah, all the above.
All right, well, good. Interesting topic. Thank you for bringing it up. So the idea that we've talked about before, that there is this vibration, you know, for lack of a better word, you know, that there is this vibration that we are all part of, you know, is that the conduit for clairvoyance? And that to whatever degree we can harmonize with that vibration, that conduit. And is it part of emptiness, or is it part of the space that emptiness is within?
It's part of the quantum world.
So is the quantum world part of the emptiness, part of the mind? Or is it, or does the quantum world speak of the space, that which is non-conceptual?
I think the Crivelli and contemporary quantum gravity people and quantum physicists would say that it's all the above, because as have you described matter as cooling energy, and as energy is the vibration, whether you think of whether you imagine what fills space as strings and all that sort of stuff, whatever analogy allows you to see that space is not empty, but that space is full, but it can still not have anything in it. Quantum is that place that transcends the phenomenal and the non-phenomenal. And that's why some of the early research in quantum work had proved that there were things going on great distances away that were being stimulated by something happening right here in your front yard. And that time was not an issue in the quantum world. So I'm not a physicist, but I think emptiness is included. Emptiness to the extent that something could be absolutely empty and still be full.
Is emptiness a noun, or is it a adjective? Is it a
Well,
thing? Is it a thing, or is it a quality of a thing?
I think it's a quality of of things and no things. And empty is an adjective. Yes, empty of like empty of your own nature, for instance, empty of its own nature, like my screen here.
We were talking about quantum qualities. We're talking about matter and energy, aren't we? And that is, I've read some books on that. I can't claim to understand that books on biocentrism, but the quantum theory dismantles all of the concepts of the universe that we've had historically, before the 20th century. If it is to be believed, and I'm inclined to believe it, but I'm certainly not qualified to prove it. I believe, which means not much, but I believe, based on a lot of the things I've read, like books by Brian Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters. I believe that there's an endless realm of existence, and in which we are sojourners. I can't describe it, but I believe I feel it, and I certainly believe that within that realm there is the ability of some whose journey has taken them to a point of being able to have visions that some of the rest of us, including me, cannot have yet. The ability to predict, maybe even the ability to read minds, although I have been told sometimes that reading minds is just an exercise in logic, which you develop if you get to know someone. But what if you don't know them? What if you meet a total stranger, and which I've read about in
Well, what if you meet somebody and they seem very familiar to you and you like them? And you say, oh, wow, this was karma, our coming together. We're soulmates or something like that. But what about meeting somebody and working with them and seeing them every day and saying, boy, they're great. This is really a good relationship. We work together. We really get along. And you find out that at night they're going out and taking advantage of little boys and girls or something like that. Or they're going in and breaking into stores and doing all kinds of, miscreant, criminal things. And how wrong was I? How could I have been that wrong?
Well, that has probably happened to most of us, if not all of us.
So I'm just making.
I think before we get to actually know somebody, we recognize ourselves in another person. That reinforces our goodness, and we end up falling in love with ourselves in inhabiting somebody else's sphere. And I mean, that's what that is. That's that's in self-infatuation. So and we all got evil streaks, in our dreams, and in our deepest nightmares, we have murdered. We probably have diddled little boys and little girls. We've done anything the mind could imagine in the depths of the mind. But I think meeting your own doppelganger, is pretty cosmic. I don't think it means. I think it might mean that you've known them in a previous lifetime, and it might mean that they're really, really well aligned with you with regard to your values and your your frame of thinking and your attitudes. Yeah, I think it happens more than we know. We just don't recognize it.
Okay, well, let's bring it back now to the book and dive into this next part here that we were talking about, the superior wisdom awareness. And we have to define a few things here, so for our conversation. So we're talking first off, about transcendent awareness. What are we aware of? Are we aware of the everyday mundane things that we experience and so on? Or are we now tuning in to something that is transcendent, something that is beyond that? And all these mundane things can be interpreted, reinterpreted based on that transcendent awareness. It can redefine things, transcendent awareness. So the method to get to there, of course, is to be able to one-pointedly focus the mind, to be able to turn ourselves off from all the external things, all this mundane stuff, so that this natural wisdom, this transcendence that we have the ability of, is able to come up. So the definitions here, one of them is vijnana. Vijnana is defined as the relative knowledge that has been tested and realized as temporal. In other words, everyday phenomenal stuff that happens, our ordinary wisdom, ordinary knowledge. How does the TV work? How does this computer work? How does the light switch work? I flip a switch and the light comes on. How does, if I have a conversation with somebody, how I can make them feel happy or I can make them feel sad just by putting a few words together. So this is Vijnaya. This is that relative knowledge. And what we're focusing on are empty, illusory objects. So the TV, the light switch, our conversation. There are objects that are in our mind as we are engaging with these things, either one-on-one ourselves or with others. We're engaging, but these things are all empty of their own individual self. They are all composites. And that there is this sense of the knower. Oh, I know this. I know this. So this knower becomes a topic that we're going to come back to. But the knower here is knowing this phenomenal world, knowing how it operates. And some people are very good at it, and some people are terrible at it. They seem to have no street sense, so to speak. They're easily taken advantage of. They're very naive. But some people seem to be very wise just right away. So that's Vijnana. Vijnana is this relative knowledge. The second is jhana. And we've seen this many times, and we've seen this jhana and we've seen prajna. And these two, sometimes seem to be talking about the same thing. And it's always been a bit of a riddle to me, how does it get defined? So through a little bit of examination and so on, I've come to the point to say, well, let's use these definitions for the sake of our conversation. It may not be 100% right, but what in our conversation is 100% right? But we have to create some conventions on which we can agree to begin a discussion. So jhana, the second group, is the knowledge that is inseparable from the total experience of reality. The total experience of reality. So what that means is it's taking into consideration the phenomenal wisdom as well as the absolute wisdom. And it's kind of commingling those two things together in jhana. That wisdom awareness of these two things becoming inseparable with each other. And then prajna is the absolute, is that which cannot be explained by ordinary human beings. It is the primordial innate wisdom, the ultimate reality. Recognizing the deceptive nature, the essence of appearances, that recognizes the deceptive nature, the essence of appearances, and the knowing mind that projects them into perfection of transcendent wisdom. So my just saying this right now, it just goes in one ear and out the other. It's the kind of thing you really got to sit and you got to ponder, you got to contemplate it for a few minutes, and maybe your contemplation will rest and you'll have a vision, you'll have an experience with that definition there. And that's what this really requires. That's what meditation and contemplation are all about. But to try it again, recognizing the deceptive nature. So that which we think is real, that which we believe to be real, that which we can rationalize in so many grandiose ways that makes us seem like we know what we're talking about. The essence of appearances and the knowing mind that projects them into perfection of transcendent wisdom. So this is, so there's this pure wisdom, this prajna, and then it slips right down into the jhana, which now is being able to process it in our human minds. So where do we stay? Do we move about these three? Is it a state of flux? Once we are introduced to the jhana, do we start looking at things and start, saying, oh yes, this is absolute wisdom. This is fantastic. Or do we have to experience the absolute wisdom? And then what results after that? So I'm going to turn it over to everybody to speak, but from my own experience, I'll say this, that I thought I knew what I was talking about until I experienced the absolute. And the absolute didn't last very long. But I realized at that point, I didn't know anything I was talking about. And then I wanted to get that tattoo on my arm that says, shut thy mouth.
So Lance, in the jewel ornament, it's defined several ways, but the first way we bump into it is that wisdom awareness is the perfect and full discrimination of all phenomena. And then that happens, that's classified in 3 different levels. I like the names of the levels. There's the mundane and the lesser supramundane and the greater supramundane. And I'd rather be in the greater supramundane because it just sounds like a cool level. Do these levels, because I bumped into meditations that you can do in order to experience the different jhanas as a meditator. Do these jhanas coincide with these with this sort of gradient of awareness of things, like mundane things, and then the more esoteric things, and then the finest possible things? Does that sort of coordinate?
Well, I think it's all relative.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to question what the intent of the author of that was, what they were trying to convey, and to be able to transcend it. When we're locked in a room, we can't imagine what it's like to be outside that room. But once we go outside that room, now we have a context and be able to get back in the room and say, oh, well, this room is within that. So until we can experience that which is what we might call the absolute, or that which is non-conceptual, whatever you want to call it, whether it's super mundane or whatever. Mundane, if it's got the word mundane in it, to my thinking, it automatically cancels out any idea that it's going to be absolute, because it's relative to the mundane. It's in its own definition, its own name of the word. So I think it requires the contemplation and requires the experience of liberation, the experience of meditation, of pure meditation, of being able to break through, of crossing over, of cutting through, and in Buddhism and in rather in Tibetan language, Togul and can't think of the other word, cutting through and crossing over are the 2 words that they refer to. So until you can have that experience and understand that part of things, or experience that thing, I'm not saying you understand it, but you experience it, everything is just a guessing game. That's what I think. What do you think?
There's one really good meditation teaching that I I like to listen to, where I think her name is Jetsun Khandro Rinpoche. I think she has a center somewhere down around where you guys are, but it was a Lojong training, and she says, she lays out kind of the framework for beginning your meditation, and she says, Vijnana to Jnana, and then Alaya to Dharmakaya. And that,
Say it again.
Vijnana to Jnana, and then Alaya to Dharmakaya. So I think she's the Lojong training there. is describing the process that you're talking about.
Okay, I understand that. But neither one of those is really talking about the absolute. Pure
So I think
absolute, pure absolute. It's talking
think-
about manifest. It's talking about manifestation of that.
Well, she's talking about meditation, but I think Dharmakaya is pretty close.
Well, I just, you have to be sure that you're not twisting it around too.
I'm just quoting her exactly. Vijnana, Tuchanana,
Exactly what,
Alaya
yeah.
to Dharmakaya.
is she compared, because Alana, the Alaya consciousness is the, what they call the storehouse consciousness. That we would say is like the soul. And the soul can be stained. And it's being stained with karma, the karmic results, and so on. But in the absolute, you transcend that. That
Which is
falls
Dharmakaya.
away. Huh?
I think
Which is Dharmakaya, which is
Right.
Dharmakaya.
So
So,
that's what I was saying. I think she is describing, and forgive me for not being able to quote more or, you know, give what she was saying before this, but she's just was describing the process I think that you were describing with of meditation, kind of starting with maybe what, I don't know, where we're at, and then moving to the more kind of ultimate sense, or the, yeah, I don't know, the ground, or the Dharmakaya. But I think it was the Lojong training at Drikung Dharmasarya. The great teaching. Curtis quoted it a while back, I think.
Yeah, that was February.
I think that if, from my experience, if I'm not doing anything, if my basis is to experience the absolute, there's no conceptualization. There's no trying to transform, to transmute, to transcend, to transfer across any dimension. You just sit. And after a while of just sitting, because I'm trying to explain it, because this is not something that you could really explain, because when different words or being assigned to something like that, it's I don't think it meets any criterion, because from my experience is when I don't try to do anything, where I'm just still, my mind is still, my body is still. And then from there, my spirit, my eyes are closed. While my eyes are closed, I can actually see my spirit exiting my body, leaving my body. And then once that happens, as soon as my intention would say California, I could see California immediately. As soon as my attention would say Texas, right then I'm in Texas. So it's just the process. If we're trying to do something, I think it limits, because I think defining meditation, my understanding is that you should not be doing anything. If you're doing something, then it's really not meditation. That's my understanding. That's my definition, Ed Joseph definition. If you try to do something, try to create something, then that's your mind. Try to create something. Try to have an experience. And at which point it's more sensual, it's more emotional. Whereas if you're not doing anything, it's almost like when you're sleeping. When you're sleeping, you become clairvoyant, you become clairsentient, you become clairaudient, audio, I'm not sure the term, right? To be able to hear.
Ed, what about walking meditation? You're doing something.
What's that?
What about a walking meditation?
If you actively, my understanding, if you're actively doing something, you're not meditating.
Well, there are people who might have a different view. Walking meditation.
They're calling it meditation because at which point you're active, because meditation is supposed to be like nothing. And that's through a meditative, no. If through that transcendental meditation, that's when you tap into the zero field. That zero field, it's like, that's where, I can only speak from my experience, that's where like nothing. And you can see almost like, you can see everything and nothing at the same time. So if you're walking and meditating, I don't know about that. I don't know how much regeneration, how much rejuvenation that you're getting, right? Because understand, like right now we are in the beta state because there are different levels of frequency, right? You got beta, you got alpha when you slow down your breath. You got theta, even lower level frequency, and you got delta. In delta, this is where you begin to have out-of-body experiences, right? And the gamma state is just like a totally another level. So if you are active in the beta, where we are right now, we're having discussions, things like this, is very hard to, if you're talking, you're walking, it's very hard to be meditative. You can have an awareness, as I'm speaking right now, I just create an awareness. I'm aware of my feet. I'm aware of what I'm saying. I'm aware of the taste in my mouth. I'm aware of my senses. I can do that. But is that purely meditative for me to transform, to transmute, to transcend, to leave my body? If I'm doing something active, I cannot leave my body. My spirit cannot exit my physical body. I don't know if I'm making sense here.
Well, it's interesting the way you define it that way. And I'm no scientist. I can't talk about it one way or the other, so I'm familiar with the words, but how it relates to this whole process, I couldn't say. I don't know if anybody else here can. Does anybody else have a comment specifically about what Ed was saying?
Ed mentioned transcendental meditation, and I think transcendental meditation is radically different than the meditations that might have come out of Southeast Asia, which is the dominant perception of meditation, and walking meditation, which was the Thich Nhat Hanh's gift to the world, and meditating while you're on the toilet, meditating while you're drinking tea, all of these activities that you can enjoy while you're in a meditative state, which implies that meditation is and can be a very active. And when I meditate, it's pretty active. Yeah, but I've done TM back in the day, and I definitely touched some serious silence. But I wouldn't want to do that 3 or 4 times a day, which I practice today. I wouldn't want to do TM. I haven't done TM in a long time. But there's different approaches and different definitions of meditation, obviously. Yeah. And
Michael, if I may, given that, why would you not want to engage into the TM? Given was it a positive experience for you?
It was very positive. It was very psychedelic. I mean, there was no hallucination, but it was Yeah, it was definitely transcendental, but I can't live there. I live in this phenomenal world, and you know, the meditation that I practice allows me to cut through some of the crap that I put in front of me and get more out of the moment, live more in the moment, and see more of what's here, because I get to open up to it. But I wouldn't want to spend my days. I guess it's the preference. I wouldn't want to
Well, let me-
spend my days transcending.
Well, let me ask one question, and that is, would you consider that transcendental meditation to be pure meditation? And that what you are, you know, saying you can't negotiate in everyday life is the fact that you can't reconcile the everyday life in that pure mindset.
I think it's semantics, because meditation is implies, just like contemplation, it implies an observer and an object, and there's activity, which is relationship. So yeah, I think it's a matter of Western semantics that distinguishes that.
Do you think that when we experience a meditative state, that it is a temporary state, or does it become permanent? And whether or not we are tuned in to that particular level, it's still there. And if we have the opportunity to redial into that, we can reconnect. What do you think about that?
I would say, yeah, I would agree with you.
So was the transcendental meditation, was that a particular vibration level?
It was. Yeah, it was. It was just, it was blacker and deeper and not a lot going on.
Yeah, I practiced TM years ago, and I still got a book, and I just went through it a couple of years ago. And I was amazed at how much that's my state of consciousness now. You know, I feel like I don't slip into, but I have to participate in the dynamics of what's going on in the phenomenal world. But in a moment, I can leave it all behind.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question. I was meditating yesterday morning, I'll say for roughly a half an hour, but I spent a half an hour just meditating and saying Om Mani Padme Hum for about a half an hour. Was that transcendental meditation? I mean, the transcendental meditation, as I understood it, is focusing on a word. Or
It's a state of mind.
Well, it's also a package. It was a style of meditation that was designed
Right.
as a package by the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
But the
And that's what
result is that realization of the mind.
Yeah.
Or the absolute. You know, is the mind conditioning the absolute?
Did you say the mind is conditioning the absolute, or for or towards the absolute?
Is the mind not a concept?
the mind is a concept. Mind is not a concept.
Well, what is mind then? Is mind
Well,
spirit? Is
Now
mind
it's a
spirit?
now it's a
This-
concept.
This is the conversation we've had many times.
Yeah. Now we just drew a circle around it. Now it's a concept.
See, that to me is semantics. So the point here is that it can't be, if it can, while we're debating it, while we're talking about it, we're conceptualizing it. And by definition of what the absolute is, it's non-conceptual. So as soon as we try and conceptualize it, we just negate whatever we think we know about it. But if we've had the experience, we know the experience, and that can't be taken away from us. And we know that it's beyond anything that I can say.
You see, that's my point, because before, when I was trying to get to experience, I didn't even know what I wanted to experience. I was looking for something. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Then to the process of calming my mind, then I begin to have different experiences, from being able to, like I said before, hearing sounds, hearing people talking.
But wait a minute, let me ask you now. Now, are those experiences that are in the absolute, or are those experiences that are in phenomenal nature, that have appearances?
I think it was a process and a stage, like a gradient level, because there were different levels, right? Because at first it used to panic the heck out of me when I would hear people like talking. I'm like, there's nobody here, right? And then from there, then I adapted myself to that.
So does that mean that you're looking at phenomenal nature with the enlightenment of the absolute?
Right. Now, yes.
And everything gets redefined.
Yes, because again, before, now I understand it, because the varied experiences, but before I could not.
So going back to our book, going back to this outline, then here's the difference between jhana and prajna. Prajna is that pure mind, or that pure experience that is non-conceptual. Jhana is taking that experience, slowing it down, and being able to see how that experience is all around us. Absolute nature is all around us right now.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And when we experience that absolute that can't be defined, but we can experience it in terms of the phenomenal nature.
Yes.
But we can't make the mistake of saying, well, that's the entirety of it.
Oh, no, certainly not, because we don't know, because
Right.
It's all relative to that experience.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So can I read something real quick? This is from the Jewel Ornament, page 239, and then I'm going to flip to 240. They're real quick, but they're sort of like two shoes.
Okay.
Now, it quotes the 20 stanzas. It says, if 6 parts are applied to one particle, the smallest particle becomes 6. If 6 are to be found in one place, the conglomeration becomes the same as a single particle. And then on the next page, it says, from the Gauntalanka Sutra, the mind which is stirred up by habitual propensities arises as the appearance of objects. Objects do not really exist. It is the mind. It is an error to see objects as being outer. So right here, we get this sort of, it's this, but twist it and it's this. And, and wherever you're sitting, you can be wrong, whatever pole you're at.
Or you can be right.
Yeah.
It's a point of view.
Yeah.
I like the one that says, like something like, from the beginning, the mind's nature is free from elaboration. So not to engage in subject-object duality is the Bodhisattva's practice, or something like that.
Correct. And therefore shut thy mouth. the fool on the hill. I brought up this other thing before about Trekcho and Togyo. So let me read this. Trecho, excuse me for not pronouncing. Trecho is simply to simply acknowledge that one's innate essence is empty, to say that we live in this emptiness. Togyo is to recognize that the natural display is spontaneously present. So we've talked about this before, where I've used the analogy of the Big Bang. There's the Big Bang, and no one knows what comes before the Big Bang. But then the Big Bang occurs, and now there's this display of that which nobody knows anything about. And we're part of that display. And it becomes spontaneously present. That's what we are part of. And it says that they are not our creation. They are not produced by practice. There is no imagining of anything in either Trecho or Togyo. In other words, imagining is like visualization. It's a function of the mind. So to get to that, to be in that absolute spot before the Big Bang, in this example, is to be in that pure, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment, meditation, whatever you want to call it. It goes on to say, without cutting through the trecho, without cutting through this idea of mind and emptiness, you can't directly cross with Togo. You can't see the phenomenal nature in our midst, or excuse me, you can't see the absolute nature in our midst. So in Buddhism, we talk about the Buddha field, that we become Buddha. Now all this becomes my Buddha field. Right now, it's all the source of all my emotions and all my anger and all my confusion and all that. But when I become Buddha, then all this becomes my Buddha field. It becomes my mandala. And that crossing over is what's trying to be transmitted here. So this training in superior wisdom of awareness, this transcendent awareness, is the third of the mind trainings. It may happen like that, where you have that moment of clarity. You have that moment of transcendence. And everything, all of a sudden, now I see things that I don't see it with my eyes, but I experience things that I never thought, I never knew could be experienced. I didn't know it was there, or something like that. We don't know what we don't know. But then we experience that. But as fast as it came, that's how fast it can go. So our endeavor is to make that broader, make that deeper, make that more frequent, make that become our everyday consciousness, instead of this confused everyday consciousness that we go around in all this delusion, all this confusion and everything. So in Buddhism, we call it, this is what being a Buddha is, being enlightened is. Other traditions may have other names for it. Any comments or questions about that? I know Ed Jones just came in a few minutes ago, and Ed, we've been in and out of the you might want to watch the YouTube on this.
Okay, thank
It's
you.
been a great conversation, I think.
Thank you.
What do you guys think? Has it been a good conversation? Ed, what do you think? Ed Joseph, what do you think? Has this been a good conversation? Maybe took a break. Ryan, what do you think about this? You know, you're the new man here tonight for this conversation. And I want to say, Ryan and I have been doing Buddhism 101 for years. We would do it by phone for years. So
Yep.
so he's not new to any of these concepts.
I think this is a great conversation. I'm glad to be part of it. I like what you're saying there. It reminds me of something I've heard Garchen Rinpoche say in the past, that when our minds are settled, or when we're in that state of meditation, that is the same for everybody. But what's different for maybe people who have gone there longer or can sustain that better is the post meditation. So I think he just says that, like, that state of meditative equipoise or of meditation is the same, but what's different for someone who is maybe more realized is the post meditation, which kind of made my head spin at first, but thinking about it, and I think you can understand what he's saying or where he's coming from.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. How they apply it.
Yeah, or I like in the Kutuzongpo prayer where he says, like, you beings are deluded because you don't realize the awareness of the ground, you know, and that's the basis of your going astray. But that ground awareness is all of us, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, because really, you all have such great gifts that you may not recognize, but the gift of the prayer of good actions, the prayer, Manjushri's, Samantabhadra's prayer of good actions is a magnificent prayer, and illuminates so many things. And the other prayer that is part of that that you have is the prayer of Kuntu Zangpo, the Buddha Samantabhadra. The first one is the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. Second one is the Buddha Samantabhadra. And you could just take those two prayers and study those for the rest of your life, and it can be revolutionary to your practice. Anybody else have a comment, please? Tom, what do you think?
I don't.
The wise man.
Yeah, honestly, what, you know, a lot of times I think, what do I really know? You know,
Let me ask you a question.
mhm.
Why do you think the monastics continue to practice and pray? Why do you think they teach?
Devotion, and to help all sentient beings. Without that, your enlightenment cannot happen.
Does it stabilize whatever experience they might have had?
More than an experience, I think it stabilized the realizations they've had. you know?
This is so we're never finished, in other words.
No, because how can something that's unborn be finished?
This from a guy that doesn't think.
Well, we know it's just from a point of view.
Hmm.
But Lance,
Yes, sir.
if we believe in impermanence, how can we ever believe in being finished?
Well, that's a good point. There's no ceasing. There's no birth. There's no beginning. There's no ceasing. You know, and that's one of the great things that we learn in Christianity. You know, the Alpha and the Omega. And in Hinduism, they talk about, you know, in the Holy Trinity of Hinduism, there's the creator, there's the protector, and there's the destroyer. That's the Holy Trinity in Hinduism. The creator, the protector, and the destroyer. That is within all beings. And within Buddhism, we talk about the three jewels. You know, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the mind of the Buddha, the speech of the Buddha, and the body of the Buddha. The speech and the body are servants to the mind. Okay, so now we've been talking about the 6 paramitas, the 6 perfections. And this is what a yogi, first we're a beginner and we're learning these different prayers, we're learning these different doctrines, we're learning these basic elements of discussion, intellectualization, the Dharma, to be able to, you know, start bringing our mind together, one-pointedly together. Then we become a practitioner where we're practicing these things and we're becoming the Dharma. Slowly, slowly, our life gets transformed. We become pure. We're purifying. We're getting rid of the negativities, the confusion, the non-virtues, the unwholesomeness. We purify ourselves and so on. As a practitioner, then we become a yogi. A yogi is one who is in union with the duality, with the dualistic nature that is natural to being a human being, that is natural to our phenomenal being. But now we're bringing that all together, and it becomes perfectly in union, that there is no duality. The duality becomes inseparable with each other. And then we embark on the path of becoming a wholly enlightened being. A wholly enlightened being, that's a bodhisattva, a wholly enlightened being. And as we embark on that path, then we purify all the obscurations of the emotions and the obscurations of worldview and the obscuration of wisdom awareness, what we've been talking about tonight. And this is very high on the spectrum, you know, to get to that point. So as we are on that pathway of being a bodhisattva, we are purifying, or we are perfecting those 6 perfections. We start doing it now. We become aware of it now. We start working on it. As a practitioner, we're working on it. As a yogi, we're working on it. We're getting better and better and better. That spiral is going around. That spiral is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. as it gets to the very pinnacle and so on. So these 6 perfections are being purified, are being developed, are being perfected. Excuse me for explaining it that way. But so we've been talking about 5 of these perfections. We've been talking about generosity. We've been talking about moral ethics. We've been talking about patience. And if you remember, those things were all part of the first of the mind trainings, the mind training of the body. Then we talked about the 4th one, which was the mind training of the mind, when we talked about meditative concentration. We talked about last time, and we started off our conversation tonight talking about that. And then we get into the perfection of the wisdom awareness, being aware of what is going on around us in the light of that of that wisdom of the experience of the absolute. So that's the 5. Where's the 6th one? The 6th one is the perseverance. The perseverance to work on the generosity, to work on the morality, to work on the patience, to work on the meditative concentration, to work on the wisdom awareness. So it's very much, I'm taking my desk apart here. So it's very much like a bracelet with only 5 beads on it. The 5 beads are the ones that we just talked about: the generosity, the moral ethics, the patience, the meditative concentration, and the wisdom awareness. And the string is the perseverance. That none of these things would be possible without the perseverance. You could say that they're all interconnected, and that would not be wrong. And some people would say that those 5 jewels, those 5 pearls, are strung on wisdom. And that wouldn't be wrong either, to look at it from that point of view. But I think from our point of view as beginners, and those of us who are practitioners and so on, who are working, I think it's very helpful to think of it, to not forget about the perseverance and the importance of perseverance. So we just said a few minutes ago that this becomes a lifestyle. This is what we do for the rest of our lives. So this perseverance is accomplished through listening, through contemplating, through meditating, through abandoning idleness, overcome laziness, to use armor light to this perseverance becomes like armor as we go into some kind of a battle, that it becomes like armor, that we put it on, and that through all the temptations of things to put this aside and say, oh, I don't need to pay attention to this today, or for the next week, or for the next year. I'll worry about it later when I get older, or something like that. So we put it on, this perseverance, like armor, to protect us from those kinds of thoughts. And then it also becomes like an insatiable diligence. You know, and I think that would have to be said that it would be a joyful diligence. If there's no joy in it, then something needs to be fixed. It should be very happy. It should be very joyful. So, Michael, what do you think about that? what do you think about the joyous aspect?
I think joy is a natural attitude and an experience for humans. It's our natural sort of exuberant self, but we load it down with challenges.
So it has to be cultivated?
It has to be revealed.
Sustained?
Sustained, yes. Revealed, sustained, yeah, because you can smother it. Yeah.
But it's naturally there.
Yes. Yes. It's the fire that you have when you after you take your first breath and there's something inside of you that's going, holy shit, here we go again. I'm alive. It's aliveness at its best.
Gary, what do you think about that?
Sorry, did you say my name?
I was saying Gary.
Oh, Gary, sorry.
Gary, is your microphone stuck or something? All right. Did somebody else want to speak about this? I was asking about this joyous, diligence that would be part of this string, on which these jewels, these pearls of the 6 paramitas are strung. Ed Joseph, what do you think about this? Are you back with us? Ed's gone into.
I'm sorry, Lance, something happened to my screen. Could you retrace the question for me? I was so busy trying to fix this thing.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm sorry. I was just making the point about this perseverance and saying that, we abandon idleness. We put on armor. Our persistence, our perseverance becomes like armor, and that we have an insatiable, joyful diligence to it. There's a joyfulness to it. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that is that is the power of mindfulness. That it enables you to filter out the confusion and distractions and obscurations that are always around you, and leads to the type of quietness and emptiness that if I'm following what you're asking, that takes us on the journey that we want to go on to emptiness and consciousness. I may not have quite caught what you were trying to give, but that's part of what I heard.
Is that enjoyable?
I don't know how the conventional the conventional notion of enjoyment applies here. And the word enjoyment it is a type of bliss as opposed to a type of contentment, a type of quietness, spiritual quietness. I would use the word serenity more than enjoyment, but I just be parsing things here. Peace. Peace.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's good. Anybody else have a comment? Tom, did you want to say something? You wigged out there for a minute.
My computer died, so I had to plug it in. But on the conversation of joyful effort, well, it seems as though more we try to practice, and like I said, we all have instances of enlightenment every day. You know, small ones, larger ones, and we realize that by seeing the joy in others as the light bulb comes on, it cultivates our natural Buddha nature to want to practice these paramitas. Because it's not just for ourselves. Because ultimately we have to help. It's as we say at the end of our prayers, for the benefit of all beings. It's not for something for us to grasp or get, but it's always to help others. So if you realize that, I mean, why wouldn't there be joy in doing these paramitas, practicing? You know, there's nothing but joy. But the causes and conditions have to be there for it to ripen and to realize that. Once we do, it's automatic. But I'm still working on that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ed, did you want to say something? Ed Jones, did you want to say something? It looked as if you wanted to turn your microphone on.
Thought it was on. Is it on?
It's on now, yeah.
Joy is personally to me perhaps the greatest deprivation that the lack of joy is joy. I've never been able to get a hand. I see other people experiencing joy. I see my wife experiencing it all the time in nature and other people. And it's not something that I experience as I hear other people describe it. I mean, I can experience satisfaction. I can experience some serenity. Joy is just not something I recognize. And I'm aware that that's just a lack that I have. Some of that may be semantics, I don't know, but I don't think so. I mean, I see an exhilaration in other people that I just don't feel.
Well, that's one of the things that we do meditate on. It has to be cultivated, some people more than others, but it's something that has to be worked upon. And even if we don't have joy for ourselves, that we have joy for others. If you can recognize the joy, as you said, in your wife or in other people, to recognize that there is joy.
Yeah, I can do that.
you know?
I just
And-
don't feel it like, yeah.
But it is an ingredient in the holy enlightened mind, what we call the holy enlightened mind, where we talk about bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And the joy there actually is empathetic joy. And what that means is it's less the joy for ourselves, but more the joy for others, seeing that others have joy and to be able to have them sustain that, and that we not diminish that in any way. So that's a interesting observation that you make, and you know, your candor and being able to bring that up and so on. But that's something to contemplate, something to think about. You know, do you feel like, and I'm just asking rhetorically, you know, do you feel like you need to work on that, or is it something that, okay, you made my peace with it and I don't need to go any further with it?
Yeah, I don't know. In some ways, I feel like it's almost in the genes. I mean, I never saw any joy in my father. I saw morality. I saw ethics. I saw accomplishment. I saw a whole lot of things, but never any joy. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I inherited that that deficiency. I don't know. I would work on it if I knew how to work on it. And meditation may be a pathway.
Do you have the book Stages of Meditation?
No.
Okay. Well, we've gone over it before, you know, and
Yeah,
that might be a good place to begin. And at some point, I'd like to revisit that book and so on. But that's one of the stages of meditation is cultivating joy.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Ryan, did you want to say something? I see your
Yeah, I
microphone.
did. Because I feel like joy isn't what the paramita is. It's perseverance. So I don't think it's saying that it's supposed to be joyful or easy. I think that the perfection that we're working on is to persevere through working with the method on one side and the wisdom on the other side. It's more like, I think it might be more saying like something more like diligence than joy, but I think it's telling us that we should take joy in being diligent, or take joy in the fact that we are persevering. So like we should, through I would bet a man like Ed's father, who I bet he took some joy in being moral, or in maintaining ethical discipline, or being generous, or I don't know, like, so maybe it's just not like joy, like, you know, sexual ecstasy, or joy like eating a delicious piece of like dessert or something, but maybe it's more talking about taking joy in the struggle, kind of, or taking joy in, or being enthusiastic with how we persevere through the stages. And like these are the perfections too, so it's not like any of us are perfectly generous or perfectly moral or perfectly wise or have perfect meditative concentration, but maybe just more to take joy in the struggle or in the work or something. Or like sometimes I have written down in my book zeal as another descriptor. So I don't know, maybe that, I hope that's helpful, Ed, but
Yeah, no, I think that's,
just being more real than the rest of
you
us.
know, I guess the way you're using joy is the way I would use satisfaction. I mean, I take satisfaction in diligence. I take satisfaction in the struggle. But joy to me is an emotional high.
Yeah, and I don't feel like that's what I don't know, maybe I'm still trying to figure it out myself too, but
Yeah. I don't feel an emotional high necessarily. I just think I do feel satisfaction in some things.
yeah, and I feel like that emotional high is not, that doesn't relate to any kind of perfection that we're talking about here. Like it's not like a, I don't know, maybe it does. I'm
Yeah.
learning all this stuff too, but
Yeah.
perseverance is the word. The joyful endeavor or whatever that's talked about in other places, I feel like is more taking joy in the happiness of other people also. And maybe that bringing about some kind of ability to persevere when times are tough. Or I don't know, maybe change your focus away from yourself and towards helping others. So that's in some ways relates to generosity and ethics and all the other ones too, patience and things, all the skills.
When we think in terms of the joy that's involved in bodhicitta, we pretty much, I mean, most of us automatically consider that empathetic joy, which I mean, I think is it can be a completely different experience. I think it can be a compounded experience, so a more exhilarating experience than simple joy.
Right, and doesn't empathy, doesn't that relate to like the other person and not like, so.
Yeah, no, it means enjoining another in their joy. Yeah.
Right, yeah, so like what Ed was describing as like his wife in nature or something like that, I think is that,
Yes.
I think of empathy more of joining in somebody's sorrow than I do somebody's joy. But maybe that's
we're talking about
that-
empathetic joy.
okay.
Is that sympathy? If you're looking at someone's sorrow, is that having sympathy as opposed to empathy? Unless the empathy that you're sharing is your sorrow.
I think sympathy is just feeling sorry for somebody. Empathy is more sharing of whatever their predicament is, whatever their
And so
emotions.
this is just sharing in their joy.
Okay, well, maybe what I'm hung up on is language.
And then compassion is would be the wishing that they're not suffering or something.
Well,
In the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, there is a chapter that is dedicated to each one of these 6 paramitas. And they're not long pages. They're, 6 to 10 pages or so. I think one might be 20 pages. So there's a lot more that can be discussed, thought about, and so on like that than we have had time for. This was a means to be able to trigger the conversation. But there's more stuff that can be enjoyed by reading and contemplating and so on. So I invite you to do that. And then in the outline, there's a sentence or two for each one of those chapters to try and give a condensation of what that means. I'm not going to go into that now, but you know, I think you might all enjoy taking some time and studying that a little bit. You know, I've said many times, 101 is not meant to be a comprehensive teaching on everything. It's to be an introduction to, you know, and incite your investigations further. All right, so unless someone else has anything else that you want to add before we close out? Okay, Curtis, thank you for tuning in.
I was enjoying being with my niece.
He's like come out of the bullpen, and do you need to throw a couple strikes or something?
No, I really am enjoying, to use the word too much, the way we're reflecting about this, the nature of this thing. And then it's all men here. It's kind of interesting. You know, I thought for a second, I kind of stumbled into a men's group talking about feelings, you know, and how you can feel joy in life. It really would fit.
Well, one day we'll all shave our heads and wear robes.
I like the word enthusiasm. There's something about, you know, when you're enthusiastic, you know, you can mow the grass, then you can do the gutters. But when you don't have that enthusiasm, you know, you're dragging the whole time. But if you're enthusiastic, it just, you're very much more productive and your morale's better. I think that's something we all can experience, where we're got good energy rolling to get things done, kind of happy about doing it. I think that's relatable, you know, less abstract. You know, I mow the grass joyfully a lot better than I do when I don't feel like doing it and I'm kvetching about it.
Ryan used the word zeal. You know, another
I
one
never
is
approached
zest.
zeal with mowing the grass.
All right.
It's hard to talk about feelings with no women.
Why?
There are a lot of long silences.
I was a woman in my last life.
Were you?
No doubt.
Yeah, well, that explains your sensitivity and empathy. And
I'm a Virgo in this life.
okay.
Well, I didn't think we were talking about feelings.
Well,
Yeah, you didn't tell me you were talking about feelings. I wouldn't have come. That's scary.
You took a right turn there.
Well, there's joy in our male camaraderie.
All right, boys. We'll do our dedication prayer by Lord Jigden Sumgun on page 21. So I invite everybody to recite along with me. We'll go slowly so that the words can penetrate our stubborn minds. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sravaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious in Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hom. Om, Ah, Hom. Om, Ah, Hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all beings. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Lance.
You're
Right,
welcome.
friends.
Thank you.